Hello, everyone. Hope you all are having a good day. Today, I'd like you to imagine a scenario. And for a lot of you, this is not going to be a difficult exercise. You're towards the end of a chaos run, everything is going smoothly, you've got a decently high HP count, you've got the epiphanies you want, you've got good gear, everything seems to be going right. You're in the home stretch, and you walk into a normal fight node, only to find out that this thing is about to clear out most, if not all, of your HP and end your run early, preventing you from getting those last few key rewards to make this run a real success. I'm Poros, and today we're going to be talking about the normal enemies to look out for in Chaos, how you can recognize them ahead of time, and knowing what you can do to best avoid them. All right, let's jump right in. So I am going to talk about all of the different factions of enemies that you can run into, what their sprites look like up above here, and the normal enemies that you need to watch out for in the home stretch, how you know whether you can clear them, how likely they are to appear, and whatnot. Starting off, we are looking at this Chaos Order mod pack, and this one's a really easy one to look at. Chaos Order are the guys that show up in Blue Pot. They also show up in Twin Star Shadow, and they're like the more like humanoid-ish enemies. They actually have two different sprites, which trips people up. So you've got this like flesh ball thing right here. You'll notice that I do not have a lot of these. I think I've got more in Twin Star Shadow. So let's go there to talk about these guys. So these are like the flesh balls, like these ghouls, these like rotten people, and they actually do not have any mob packs at all in the normal fights in the second half of the interior. That's after you hit the waypoint thingy that lets you either bounce out or keep going, and you will get that free piece of equipment there. That marks the halfway point. Anytime after that, these mob packs I'm going to talk about are fair game to encounter. But for this particular group, they don't show up. These guys, however, are the other Chaos Order, and these are like the actual like people Chaos Order people. The ones who actually have like faces and can communicate. And there is 1/2 notable mob packs. I'm going to call them the Snipper mob packs because he's the commonality between them. He's this guy right here. He does a high amount of damage and shows up in two variants. He either shows up in what I call the Three Stooges variant, where it'll be him plus a Bolt Runner and a Stealer, or it'll be him plus two of these Man-Eaters right here. Now, this first version, on turn one, he's going to get buffed by both like the Bolt Runner and the Stealer, and he's going to start getting multiple actions, and that's very scary because he hits pretty darn hard, and if you are not packing enough burst damage to nail him down quickly, then he can really chunk your HP, and if you're already starting out without a ton of HP to begin with, that can spell very bad news. The other thing you have to worry about is Bolt Runner. He has a move where after he goes off, he throws out your entire hand and replaces it with a full hand of taunts, which have a chance to deal damage to you or to draw cards. So if you want to start continuing the rest of your turn, you have to risk taking damage. Meanwhile, you're also playing those cards, which is counting down the multiple actions that Snipper gets. And then after first turn, Stealer's just kind of there. He's got a pretty small HP pool. You really don't have to worry about him as much, but he does provide that all-important multi-action buff to Snipper right at the start. So in order to deal with this, you need burst damage, and you need to be able to do it in a small amount of cards so that you can get underneath the window of Bolt Runner's taunt on the turns when he's using taunt. So that can be scary. The other configuration is what I like to call Snipper and Backup Dancers. It's the Snipper and the two Man-Eaters, and the Man-Eaters don't have quite as much HP as Snipper does, but they're still pretty dangerous, And so if you are like a burst single target build, it can be a good idea to get rid of these man eaters first just to reduce the incoming damage as fast as possible. Otherwise, if you've got big AoE, you can just start clearing them out, like with Calipe or something, while hopefully maintaining enough shield that you're able to survive through the attacks. That's the pack, again, I consider less dangerous. Both of those each have a 33% chance to show up when you see this node in the second half of the interior. So if you know that you can't take one or the other, that's a 33% chance of a run ender right there. If you know you can't take either, that's a 66% chance. So that can be really, really tough to deal with. Okay, let's go on to our next faction here. We're looking at the Dialos. I think these might be random. I should have checked that first. These are the specifically like the Black Angel enemies that you'll find either in the Foretold Ruin or the Swamp of Judgment. I'll go into the Swamp of Judgment here. So you'll see all of the robots. They're like these black metal ones, and then there are the like white metal ones with the more cloth, the ones that look more holy. These black metal ones are the ones that you'll find in this sprite node, and to be honest, none of them are all that bad. You're pretty in the clear when you're talking about those guys and what they'll be able to do to you in the second half of the interior. And it's honestly the same for the white Dialos angels as well. Their like second half normal fights just aren't that big of a deal. You're going to be pretty safe as long as you're suited for the chaos, as you know, going through them. Not a bad thing at all. The invaders, they are only present in Twin Star Shadow, and they are the bug enemies that make up the majority of this chaos. There's like a ton of them, of different varieties that are all decently similar, but there is one normal fight at the end that tends to trip people up a decent amount, and that's the one that's got this soldier giant. It has, let's see, it's got this soldier shadow, and then it's got two soldier blades. And the thing about the soldier giant is that whenever another monster takes damage, so that's either the blades or the shadow, it gets taunt, which means that your single target cards can only target this guy. And that goes for both attacks and skills. So you can't even like throw out weakens or other targeted effects at the shadow or the blades. The shadow, meanwhile, you know, just can't be targeted, period, while there are other monsters up. Whereas the blades, they'll start with a decent amount of shield, and they will shield themselves again every so often and gain morale as long as their shields stay up. So you do want to be trying to break those down, which the giant is not going to let you do very easily. So all of this taken together can result in a pretty nasty fight, unless you have big AoE, like especially Calipe, because she also deals instinct damage with all of the invaders are weak to clear out the shields and the shadow behind this guy's taunt, because AoE is not affected by the taunt. Then this could be a very, very scary fight for you to take care of. And this has a 33% chance to show up. So again, not too dangerous as far as like your chances of running into it if you are forced onto a normal invader fight, but it's something to be wary of if you know that you're better suited to dealing with the chaos order fights that can happen instead. Although again, like I mentioned, those are, you know, also pretty scary depending on what your team composition looks like. Next up are the mutants, and these can be found all over the place. They show up in the Blue Pot, they show up in City of Mist, and they show up in the new seasonal chaos, Laboratory Zero. I'm going to look at the City of Mist for these guys, and these guys only have the one sprite, so if it's this sprite, it is all of the mutants, and they cover these like monstrosity kind of things, which are different than the Nylum monstrosities. There isn't like a super clear way. I guess if you were to look at this list, you would know that it's like everyone from the wolf onward here. So it's like all of the like weird animal looking ones, or the like more, I don't know if I would call them human, but like more like human-esque. They're not like bloat fleshy monsters in the same way that the Nihilum ones are, count as these mutants. And there are 2 packs of mutants, one of which is the infamous dog walker, Gloomy Prime over here, who comes with 3 gloomy beasts and summons more of them. You'll notice that in the description right here, it says he applies wildness to Gloomy Beast. That's this like ferocity thing that once they gain a certain amount, they activate a much stronger move. And so you kind of have 2 ways to deal with Gloomy Prime. One of which is a lot safer, but it's less accessible if you're not geared properly for it. And I forget exactly how Gloomy Prime worked before they nerfed him, but as he stands now, the summoning that he does to replace Gloomy Beasts when they die is an actual stack thing that he has. He can only do 2 of them a turn, and when he's out of stacks to summon, he will not summon anymore, and he will usually then take a turn to buff himself up and get more of those summon stacks back, which then he will use on the subsequent turns. But it means that if you can repeatedly clear out these gloomy beasts and do so safely, then you will eventually burn through the summon stacks and you will get free turns to start DPSing Gloomy Prime. Meanwhile, these gloomy beasts don't do all that much damage until Gloomy Prime buffs them. So, and Gloomy Prime's personal damage itself has been reduced by quite an amount since the nerf. So if you can actually do this AoE control of the gloomy beasts, that's what I would recommend you do. However, there is also the option to just try and burst down Gloomy Prime as fast as possible. The first turn, he is going to be doing buffs to activate the ferocity on the gloomy beasts, so the attacks will start coming out turn 2. You can usually survive 1, maybe 2 attacks. So if you can kill him turn 2, that's great. You probably can get off scot-free. A turn 3 kill will be dicey for your health. Turn 4, you're going to be looking really, really bad. And if you can't rush him down in turn 5s, then this guy is probably going to link crash you, if not just kill you outright. The other, less complained about, but still trips people up fight is the duo of the Deer Shadow and the Human Shadow. So this Human Shadow likes to buff up the Deer Shadow, and the Deer Shadow every 4 turns is going to reduce your morale and resolve. Additionally, when the Deer Shadow dies, the Human Shadow will enrage and start doing more powerful attacks himself after a little bit. However, the Deer Shadow does have only like 2/3 the hit points of the Human Shadow, and it's the thing that is going to be scariest right off the bat. It does take a little bit of time to ramp up, however, and the Human Shadow's buffs for him aren't that fast. So if you can reliably kill him turn 2, turn 3 at the latest, because again, you do not want the like Shadow Swipe morale reduction to go off on you and make you weaker. But if you can, get him down reasonably early while helping wear down the Human Shadow, then that's a good way to take this fight. Most people, if you have like AoE, just like trying to clear them both out and target any single target damage you do have at Deer Shadow just to get it down that little bit faster, that's a good way to do it too. But getting this guy down early is the more important thing, despite the enrage mechanic on Human Shadow. So again, This, however, is also like 1/3 chance in addition to Gloomy Prime. So altogether, you've got like a 66% chance to run into one of these two packs in the second half of the interior, and that can be pretty darn scary. So it can often be best to try and avoid this sprite altogether. Now there is the first of the Nylum enemies. This like egg cocoon thing are the fleshy guys, these like white flesh coated monsters. And the very, very dangerous one is the empty mouths, which this description for empty mouths is like entirely wrong. It says each time it takes damage, its attack count increases on the next turn. That is not what it does. Instead, it builds up a buff on turn one called Gnaw, which works very, very similarly to Hungry. Get out of here. I'm not that. Anyways, what was I saying? Right, the Gnaw stacks. Every hit you do reduces the Gnaw stack, and subsequently the empty mouth's damage. However, even if you reduce all 7 of the Gnaw stacks, it still hits really, really hard, and it has a lot of HP to get through as well. And that's what makes this guy so scary. So unless you are really confident in your ability to burst this guy down in 2 turns, 3 turns, 4 turns, absolute max, then you should be avoiding this egg cocoon sprite, because this guy has a 50% chance to spawn in that sprite in second half interior. Then, easy way to finish things out, the second half of the Nylum enemies, these like shadowy looking guys. Those guys, honestly, all of their normal fights, pretty darn easy. You don't got to worry about them. The sacred fights, these are the more flowery ones in the Swamp of Judgment. This is the only place they show up. So these are like the more, like, I guess you could say like insect focused ones, or like the fairy ones. So like the fairies, I think the, like, yeah, any of the ones that like say fairy on them are what this sprite has. And their normal fights are honestly pretty easy. Elites are a bit of a different story for a lot of these factions. We're going to cover that in a second video. If you've been enjoying this one so far, though, or if you disagree with any of the choices I've made, or think there should be more normal monsters on this list, do let me know in the comments below. And maybe I'll do a follow-up video talking about all of those ones. But for now, we've got one final sprite, and that's the other sacred sprite. These are the evil spirits. So these are like the more like energy guys, like these ones and these ones, or not these ones, these ones. And I think it also covers like the elementals or the evil spirits. Yeah, anyone who says like evil spirits covers them. The delineation is not as clear. I am still getting these guys confused, but thankfully, just like the fairies, the normal fights here, not too tough. And if you'll remember, Swamp of Justice has both the Dialos monsters that you would normally find in Foretold Ruin, and both of those factions also had fairly normal fights. So Swamp of Judgment, you can just take any normal fight you want in the interior second half, and you'll be swimming pretty. Anyways, I have made a little handy-dandy spreadsheet just to summarize up all this information that we've talked about here. So feel free to take a screenshot. I'll also provide a link to this document in the description, as well as a really, really good resource by a guy named Dench. He allowed me to take a lot of the sprite art that I have for the different factions from his spreadsheet, and he enumerates all of the different monsters in both first half and second half, outskirts and interior, for all of the different factions, as well as their appearance rates. He does the elites as well, so if you want to know every single fight and every possibility at every stage of the game, it's a really, really good resource. I just wanted to focus on the ones that were giving people lots of difficulty. And with that, we're going to talk one little bit about routing in chaos and how you can put this experience to practice. So I am going to jump into a lab 0 level. Let's go into the seasonal chaos here. And I'm going to jump in. I'm just going to do this. That's really, really scary. I'm just going to quickly re-observe that one. Yeah, well, we'll do this. Okay, and we're just going to jump in. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I'd like to pretend that I'd already made it all the way to the back half of all the way to the back half of the interior. And yeah, we'll take that. Just get out of here. This isn't a real run anyway. But yeah, so once we have access to our map, I'll show you what I mean. So if we're in the interior and we are doing our best to like route through and be as safe as possible, then, you know, after we hit here, we're going to know, okay, these are the normal fights. And you'll be able to see there are, you know, no matter sort of what path we go down, we're usually going to have to fight a normal fight. There is actually a path that lets us skip every normal fight here. So if we go either from these, or no, actually just from this one, we can go here to the elite, then down to here, then to either of these ones here, and we can skip normal routes altogether. But if we had to take a normal fights, let's say this route wasn't available, then trying to end up at a node that lets you pick between normal fights instead of getting forced into one is really, really helpful. So if this one was also a normal fight, then ending and this was the event instead, and you were here, then routing to this event where you had a choice of 2 fights afterward, instead of routing to this event where you had to go to this fight, would be a much safer strategy, because now you get to pick between 2 options. You get to evaluate which faction is scarier, which has a higher chance of putting me up against a mob that can end my run and can, you know, ruin all of my time investment, getting my good epiphanies, getting my good gear, and whatnot. So I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, go ahead and subscribe for more Chaos Zero Nightmare content, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.